We're standing in front of an engine company here in the city of Fitchburg. This is one of 3 engine companies that we have in service. An engine company is designed to carry water, hose, and personnel to get from the firehouse to the incident location, and its primary mission is to extinguish fires. What are some of the items that you might find on an engine company in the city of Fitchburg? Well, where I'm standing right now, we're next to the cab. So in the cab, you'll find where the firefighters sit. So we have seats, but we just don't have a regular seat like you have in a vehicle. Our seats actually have our air packs built into the seats. So when we go to a call, we can actually be wearing and putting on our air packs. So when we get to the incident location, we can come out of our seat with everything that we need already on us to go to work. You'll also find hose and water on our engine companies. We have a lot of hose. That is by design so that we can effectively and efficiently put out fires that are all sorts of different sizes and distances from our engine companies. We are standing in front of what we call our pump panel. Our pump panel controls all of the water movement in our vehicle. From this pump panel, we can use these controls here to let water into the pump. The controls up here all control water going out of the pump. Some of the other things that we talked about with these discharge valves up here is our hose. And our hose, some of our hose is kept right here, right next to us. That allows us quick access to the hose. All of these hose sections are pre-connected to the engine. It's set up that all we have to do is open up a valve and we have water in our hose. So in our yellow and green hose down here, they're about 200 feet long. And in order for us to effectively use those to put out a fire, we have to have about 150 PSI at the end of the hose so that the nozzles work like they should. The blue hose up top is 200 feet long. That's 2.5 inches in diameter. I should say that the yellow and the green hose is about 1.75 inches. So it's a smaller hose. So when you think about it generically, we use a smaller hose on smaller fires, or the smaller hose where we have to move around a bunch of corners, such as a house. If a room was on fire in a house, we would use that. If it was a larger building or if there were multiple areas on fire or just a large area in general, we would use the blue hose. The blue hose puts out about 250 gallons per minute. That's a lot of water. In comparison, the yellow and the green hose, the 1.75 inches, puts out about 150 gallons per minute. The orange hose that you see on top over here, that's actually a little bit shorter. That's 150 feet, but it's set up so that we can actually pull that hose off, and on the end of it, there's a gated Y. So there's 1 input and 2 output. And we can connect a yellow and green hose here, or we actually have other bundles or high-rise packs that we can connect to the end of that for apartments or large buildings that have standpipe systems where we can go in and we can connect to the water source in there instead of always having to hook up to our engine. So when one of our engine companies is on scene of a fire, you may see someone standing near this compartment, we call the pump panel, throughout the incident or close to it. That person is our driver. They drive the vehicle to the scene, and then they also operate the vehicle once it's there. So once they get out, they're going to make sure the wheels are chalked so that the truck doesn't roll away if something bad happens, something fails mechanically on our vehicle. But then they're also going to make sure that water comes into the truck and water goes out of the truck through the intake and discharge valves. So the operator of the vehicle, or the driver, we call it a driver operator or a chauffeur, they are in communication with the lieutenant or the acting lieutenant or the nozzle person at the end of the line. A lot of times that communication takes place through hand signals. So you might see this or this. That's either charge the line or shut it down. Because if we can do something through a hand communication, we don't need to be on the radio. And the radio frequencies can get tied up with other extremely important information it needs to get through instead of shut a line down or charge the line. So it's just one way that we try to always stay in contact with each other is through communication, either verbally or through hand signals. In the same compartment as the pump panel, we have what we call the driver's compartment, where we have everything the driver may need. We have short sections of 4-inch hose that we connect to the hydrant. We have extra nozzles and large Ys. And a Y, again, is where you have one input and two outputs. So we have extra nozzles and hose down here. On the top shelf, we actually have extra adapters so we can connect different sizes of hose together. We also have extra spanner wrenches, and this is actually what a Y is. So in this case, we would have 4-inch hose that comes into here. It goes into this fitting, and we can put two smaller pieces of hose onto the end here, and when we have water up to here, we need to go into small hose, we just turn one of the valves, and now water would be flowing into that hose line. So our engine companies are equipped with a lot of different tools. As you can see, there's 3 tools here, but on the back side of this board, we've got about 6 or 8 more tools that we can use for all sorts of different types of situations. Some of the ones that we have here, there's a sledgehammer. This is actually a pick head axe. And up here we have what we call a closet hook. It's a 3-foot long pike pole that we can get into small areas with that. With all of these tools, we can use them to go through walls, we can pull walls apart. A lot of times the pike pole and the pick head axe we use to find fire inside the walls. Or if we have to go through one item to another or break locks, we can use all of these kinds of tools to do that kind of stuff. I told you there's a bunch of tools behind there. So in this compartment, we have a number of different items in here that are kind of across the spectrum of what we do with an engine company. On the bottom, you'll see our traffic management devices, or traffic safety cones. As you can see, we have an extra section of 1.5 or 1.75 hose, and we also have what we call our hydrant bag. In our hydrant bag, we have everything that we need to hook up our 4-inch hose to a hydrant. That hose supplies the engine with the water that we need to fight fires. So when one of our firefighters gets off the truck at the fire hydrant, they take that bag along with the 4-inch hose and can use that to connect the hose to the hydrant. On top here we have extra tarps, canvases, runners, so that if we are in somebody's home and they had a fire, we can actually put this down to protect their floors and protect their other belongings that don't need to be damaged or we don't want to damage. So in this orange and black bag, we have what is called our Rit Bag. This is a rapid intervention team bag. It has 1 bottle of air in there that lasts for about 60 minutes, and we can connect that bottle to the firefighter that's maybe inside the building that needs help. We have an extra face piece in there, along with some webbing, a special knife, some other small items in there to help us either connect this bag to the downed firefighter or to help us move that person out if it was ever needed. In this bucket here, we actually have what we call our Decon Kit. So when we are at a fire, we can generally get very dirty. We have debris all over our equipment. We use a small garden hose and a stiff bristled brush in there to get all of the big, we call it gross decon, the big stuff off of our equipment so we don't put it in the truck or in the engine. That way we can try to prevent us from contracting cancer. Cancer is one of our biggest killers in the fire service, so we try to do whatever we can to prevent and take care of ourselves from contracting that. In the back of our engine, you'll see we have our tarp, and behind the tarp is our hose. Well, how do we get to that hose? Just like we kind of saw before, we're going to take the orange strap, pull on this, and it's going to fall down for us. So now we have access to our hose. This yellow hose that you see is what we call large diameter hose. It's 4 inches in diameter, and it's set up with this strap so that when we need to connect this to a hydrant, we actually can just loop this big loop over the top of the hydrant, and then the engine can drive away and it will pull off the hose from the back of the truck. So we have 1,000 feet of this 4-inch hose on the back of the truck. We actually have 1,075 feet of 4-inch hose on the truck altogether. Up on top, you'll also see some blue 2.5-inch hose. That is not connected to anything, nor is this. Neither one of these hoses off the back are connected to anything on the truck. So if we were to just drop it at a hydrant and drive away, after 1,000 feet, we could still be driving, but we wouldn't be doing ourselves any good. So we need to know how far the hydrant is away from where we need to end up. Also on the back of our engine, we have another couple other compartments where we store brooms and short ladders. We also have a couple longer pike poles that slide in through that same area as well. So on most fire engines, you will also see ladders. Ground ladders is what we call them. They're extension ladders. 24-foot extension ladder, maybe a 12 or 14-foot roof ladder with hooks on the end of them so that we can put the hooks over the top of the roof so it doesn't slide off when we go to climb on it. Well, you haven't seen where the ladders are on our truck yet, but normally they're on the passenger side of a fire engine, mounted right here, but they're not there, so where are they? Well, over the years, the evolution of our fire engine has come to the point where they're now stored on top. But how do we get to them? That is a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. It's real simple for us. We turn on the master switch for power for the ladder rack, and we press a lever, and the whole side will come down, and our ladders are easily accessible at that point. So we're now on top, yes, you heard that right, on top of our fire engine. Up here we have a couple of things. Right in front of me, you see we have two big black boxes. One of them, the one on your left, is actually for water. That is the top of our tank, where we can fill it if we need to. If we fill it with too much water, water comes over the top and it goes out the bottom. The smaller one there is actually our foam tank. So that's where we can actually add foam to the engine. So many times when we put out a fire, we use foam because it helps us put out the fire faster. One of the other things that's up here is what we call our deck gun or deluge gun, our master stream. There's lots of different terms in the fire service depending on where you're located and what it's called. But our master stream device is here, and we actually can lift a lever, pull it up, and now we can use this to fight fires. This master stream would be used for very large fires, or if we're going to need to put a large amount of water on a fire in a short amount of time. That's what this is used for. So it can flow anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 gallons per minute based upon the needs of the fire. So in this compartment here, we have hose and cribbing. The cribbing down here is what we use to stabilize vehicles that have been involved in a car accident. We have some 4x4 cribbing and some what we call step chocks. So we use those to go under the wheels or under the vehicle where the framework, we can make that connect to the ground so it doesn't move when we work in the vehicle. The other hoses that you see, these two yellow bundles and this blue bundle, we call those our high-rise packs. Each of these bundles have 100 feet of 1 3/4 hose. So we actually would connect these two hose bundles together. These two yellow bundles get connected to this blue bundle of hose. This is 2.5-inch hose. It's 50 feet long, but it has the gated Y on it, and it also has a pressure valve on it. What this pressure valve does, it tells us how much pressure we have in the hose line so that we can make sure that our nozzle operates as it should. Where would we use something like this? Many times we use these in apartments or hotels or large commercial buildings where a regular hose line of 200 feet would not get us to the fire. Many times in those buildings we connect to what we call a standpipe, which is, think of it this way, it's a hydrant inside the building that's specifically designed for us to connect this type of stuff. So in this compartment, we have a number of different things. We have salt that you will see for winter, right? We want to make sure that we are not slipping and sliding. A lot of times in the winter, we have water on the ground. It freezes, it causes ice, so we want to make sure that we're safe on the fire ground. We also have oil dry, because sometimes when we go to car accidents, there are fluids that end up on the ground, and we use that to absorb some of that to make sure it's safe for us to work. Over here, you'll actually see, this is where we keep extra air bottles for the air packs that we have inside the cab. On the other side, you'll see a very similar compartment, but it actually houses fire extinguishers. So we have an ABC extinguisher and a foam extinguisher. And we take those in on just about every single fire alarm or structure fire that possibly could be working. In this compartment here, we have a number of different items that can be used for a number of different incidences that we respond to. On the top over here, we have what we call our utility rope. We also have looks like a bucket, but it is actually an extension cord. And we use that quite a bit in some of the apartment buildings or homes that we go to where we need to use our fan. On this shelf here, we actually have our water rescue equipment. So we have what we call our noodles, flotation devices. We've got a couple rope bags in here for connecting to the people that would be wearing our Gumby suits. We also have a throw rope in here and life jackets. On the bottom, we have an electric positive pressure ventilation fan, and we also have a Class D fire extinguisher. In this area here, we have our combination Hearst tool. It is basically one aspect of the jaws of life. On top, we have what we call our strut bag. That has all of the attachments and webbing that we need to use our struts, which are located on the back side of the Hearst tool here. And then over here we have another strut, a big grain shovel, and what we like to call our irons. The irons are basically two different tools when combined. We call it the irons. We have a Halligan bar and a flathead axe. These two tools work extremely well together, and that's exactly why you'll see the groove here in the head of the axe, that this actually pairs up with it perfectly. This here is basically the key to any building that we need to get into that we don't have keys for. We can get into the building with this. We're back here at the front of the engine, and this is where a lot of this action takes place when we are going to a call. This is where our siren is located. This is the siren. This is what you hear when we're going down the road. As you can see, we got red lights here. We also have a light bar up top, which doesn't look red right now, but once the light bar is turned on, it does show up red and white. The driver sits over here. The other side is where the officer sits. You can probably see through the windshield there that we actually have a computer in the front seat there. That computer gives us all of the information that we need to know about the call, where to go, what it's for, who the caller might be if we have to get a hold of somebody. It has all that information in it. One other thing is that we actually have a small compartment up in the front where we can keep extra equipment. What we have done on here is we actually have 50 feet of 4-inch large diameter hose that's kept in the front bumper. A lot of times when we hook up to a fire hydrant in the city, we will actually use this hose off the front bumper or that extra hose off the side in the driver's compartment that we talked about earlier. When we are going to a call, in order for us to take this engine to leave for a call, we first need to disconnect the shoreline so that we can leave the building. That shoreline actually charges all the electronic equipment in the vehicle before we leave the station. Once we need to get in the truck, we'll open the door. The steps drop down. Most of the time, we leave our doors open so that the steps are already down for us to get in. So now that we've put our seatbelt on, that's the first thing that we do, because in the city of Fitchburg, we do not move any fire apparatus without everybody being seatbelted in. It's for our own safety. The next thing we've done is turned on the ignition in the engine, and now we would start the vehicle if we needed to. Right now we're not going to, just because we're still inside, but we're going to go over some of the other stuff that we have in here. Up on top, here is all of the emergency controls for the lighting. So if I push that one button, as you may see in the reflections here, the lights are now on. Over here we have some of the scene lighting for the left side and the right side, or the front or the back. We also have a control over here for our arrow stick. And we actually control some of the other items in our vehicle, or how our vehicle operates, from some of the controls on this side. In front of us we have our speedometer, our tachometer, we have fuel gauges, our depth gauges, temperatures for the engine, air pressure. We have air brakes on our vehicles here, so we have to make sure that the air brakes have enough air in the system in order for them to function properly. So that's what these two are here. We have controls for our upper and lower mirrors. And then on this side, we actually have an engine brake that we can control from here. And then we have controls for the windows. So all 4 of our windows are electric. We have that. We also have heating and air conditioning control up top. And then this panel here gives us all the information about the truck, as far as what is needed. We can get into the diagnostics. We can actually look at our command zone, they call it, I believe. The battery life, the fuel gauges, everything is here. If the pump is engaged, how many hours are on the engine, all of that kind of stuff is right here if we need it. And this is our shifter. So like most people in our vehicle, either have one up on the steering column, or it might be a knob or a control that you have to move. We have push button. As a driver, one of the most important things is to make sure that you get your crew to the incident and back to the station safely. You are the one thing that stands between them going home, them being your crew, going home at the end of their shift. Because when you're driving the vehicle, you're responsible for it. Doesn't matter whatever else happens, it all falls back to you, as you are the operator. We don't take that lightly here, because it is a very, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, and there's a lot of training that we do, and just driving the vehicle, knowing how it operates, know all the ins and outs of the vehicle. Those are all the aspects that we have to know before we can let anybody behind the wheel, and they have to prove that to us. They test out, basically, in order to drive the engines. So now we're sitting in the officer seat of the engine. The person that sits here is in charge of the crew. They are responsible for everything that happens on the engine, or whatever the crew does. They are the person that's responsible for it. So up here, on the way to a call, they have a number of different things that they need to be working with. First of all, they got to work with the radios to let our dispatchers know that, one, we acknowledge the call, saying, yep, we understand that we have a call. 2, that we're responding to the call. And number 3, that we got there. And then once we're there, we use the radios to tell the dispatcher or whoever else what we need, if we need more help, whatever it might be. So these are the 2 radios in the truck that we use. We also have portable radios that's assigned to each person that rides on the engine. So the driver will have one, the officer has one, and then the nozzle person and the hydrant firefighter. They all have a individual radio that is assigned to the truck or that engine or that vehicle that they use when they ride in that position. What I have in front of me here is what we call a mobile data computer. It gives us all the information of who's assigned to a call, where the call is, what the problem is, the location of the call, when it was received, maybe contact information if we need to call somebody. All that information is based right here in our computer, and we can actually look at that on our way to the call. We also have a flashlight and what we call a TIC, or a thermal imaging camera, that's over here by the officer. So when we go to a fire, the officer is responsible to make sure those 2 things are brought in with them, because you need to be able to see, and the thermal imaging camera lets you see, kind of think about it, it lets you see through smoke in a way. The other thing that we have up here is a 4-gas monitor. So it will monitor atmospheric conditions to make sure that, as an example, we don't have a large amount of carbon monoxide in the building. That's just one example of that. We've also got some other items underneath the seat that we use, like a small digital camera. We have a lockout tagout kit, just pads of paper so we can take notes, gather information that way. All of that stuff is up here for us to use. The officer is responsible for, like I said, using the radios, communicating on the way to the call and on the way back, and needing more assistance. And on the floor, on the driver's side and on the officer's side, we have a pedal over here, and that actually operates the Federal Q siren that's on the front bumper. So we operate the siren that way, and then these here strings, cords, are for the air horn. So now we're in the back of the engine, and back here we have two positions. We have the Nozzle Firefighter and the Hydrant Firefighter. We designate it that way so it's easy for everybody to understand who's talking on the radio and what their roles are. So as the Nozzle Firefighter, the person that sits in this seat behind the officer, that's what their designation is. They are responsible for pulling the line off the engine and operating the nozzle or extinguishing the fire. So one of the things that you'll see in their seat, and this seat is just like the officer and the hydrant firefighter seat, that the air pack is built right into the seat. So when we get in here to go to a call, we will put on all of our equipment outside of the vehicle and then get in the vehicle, sit down, buckle our seat belts, and then put this on. That way, once we are at the scene, we can basically walk right out of the vehicle with this on, ready to go, and fight the fire. That's just one aspect of it. One of the other things is between the hydrant firefighter and the nozzle firefighter, they're also responsible for the medical equipment that we have on our vehicles. So in here we have our airway bag. It has oxygen, non-rebreather masks, nasal cannulas, anything to do with the airway or breathing is in this bag. The other bag that we have is more of our trauma bag. If it has something to do with bleeding or like a dislocation or maybe a broken bone, this is the bag that we would be using more likely than the other one. We're taking both bags in all the time, but we kind of separate it out to make it a little bit easier to find our equipment when we need it. The other thing that the firefighters in the back here are responsible for, we have an AED as part of our medical equipment, but in these orange bags here we also have what we call our Gumby suits. These are our cold water rescue suits, and you probably have seen us with Fact TV before, some of the videos that they have done with us training with those water rescue suits. And on top we have some mass casualty tags, as far as if we have a lot of victims, we can use that to say we have X amount of this color, that color, and we use colors, red, green, yellow, so that we can easily identify who's the most critical patient who needs the help the fastest. So we do that, and we use that to track that. We have extra air packs in the back seats here for the driver, and if something happens to one of these other air packs, we have an extra one. So the hydrant firefighter sits opposite of the nozzle firefighter in the back. So the hydrant firefighter sits behind the driver. They are responsible for connecting the yellow 4-inch large diameter hose to the hydrant. That's what they're called, the hydrant firefighter. So if we think of them as water supply, they need to make sure that they have a supply of water that's available to the engine. So when they get out of the engine, they're going to go to the back compartment, find the hydrant bag, grab the strap off the back, and connect the yellow hose to the hydrant. So we've talked a lot about the fire aspect of each of these roles, but the reality is we do not go to a lot of fires that are actively working. A lot of the calls that we go to are EMS calls or car accidents or fire alarms. And each of these positions also have a specific role in each one of those types of incidents. As an example, the nozzle firefighter at a car accident may still pull the line, the pre-connected hose, and be ready to put out a fire, but the hydrant firefighter is not going to connect to a hydrant. They're going to be using the hydraulic tools to try and get the person out of the vehicle or just check on that person in the vehicle. Each incident that we go to is not the same, but there are many different types of incidents that we go to where all of our roles change just a little bit as to what we need to accomplish. Normally on an engine, we have 4 people working on an engine company. Sometimes we might have 5 if we have someone that's going through training. They will ride along with us to get the experience, and we'll let them participate as part of the engine company. But normally it's 4 people, and in the city of Fitchburg we have 2 firehouses that are staffed 24 hours a day. We have 4 people at each firehouse, plus we have a OIC, or an officer in charge. So they are in charge of everything that happens in the city for that shift.